The Macedonian Struggle, 1904 to 1908. Here, on the soil of Macedonia, lived the Macedonians, the tall Dorian tribe of Hellenes. This land later went down in history as the birthplace of Philip and his son Alexander the Great. The Macedonians shared the common fate of all the Greeks. Enslaved to the Romans, they played a leading role once more during the Byzantine period. Thessaloniki, thanks to its position as a centre of great cultural and economic activity, rose to become the empire's second city after Constantinople, the Queen of Cities. Difficult years were then to come. Byzantium fell, and Macedonia, along with the other regions, came under Ottoman domination for 5 centuries. In the late 18th century, the Ottoman Empire began to collapse, weakened by the conflicting interests of the great powers and the national reawakening of the enslaved Christian nations. The Greeks rose first, gaining their free state in 1830. Yet Macedonia, along with the other Greek provinces of Epirus, Thessaly, Crete, and the islands of the Aegean, remained enslaved despite its great contribution to the common struggle. Halkidiki had rebelled in 1821 under Emmanuel Papas. The following year, Olympos, Pieria, and Vermio took to arms. Macedonian Hellenism mourned many slaughters, starting with that at Naousa. The Macedonian fighters headed south alongside the unarmed population, continuing the struggle for the freedom of Moria and Rumeli. Uprisings and revolutionary movements can be noted throughout the 19th century. The great moment came in 1878, when a provincial Macedonian government was founded in Litochoro. Pieria then immediately rebelled, led by Commander-in-Chief Nikolaos, Bishop of Kytros. The whole of Macedonia was up in arms by the winter of 1878. The conflicts between the great powers had their repercussions for the future of Macedonia. The Russians reached the gates of Constantinople during the 1877-1878 war. The Treaty of San Stefano created a large Bulgarian state that included almost the whole of Macedonia. Yet the plan did not succeed. The other great powers contested these plans at the Congress of Berlin, and Macedonia thus remained in Turkish hands. Discord broke out between the Greeks and Bulgarians over Macedonia, and this is when the Macedonian struggle really starts. The Bulgarians had gained their own national church, the Exarchate, through which they attempted to convert the Macedonian peasant to the Bulgarian national idea. The response of Hellenism was a magnificent educational campaign. The schools were housed in private buildings, purchased by the communities themselves or from donations made by wealthy expatriates. Educational associations from Constantinople and Athens, as well as the Greek state, rushed to help. At the same time, the clergy, under the leadership of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, was struggling to thwart the spread of the Bulgarian Exarchate throughout Macedonia. Ethnicity in Macedonia was becoming more and more identified with church affiliation. Patriarchist meant Greek, while Exarchist meant Bulgarian. Yet the propaganda and blackmail did not suffice on their own, and so the Bulgarians exploited the defeat of the Greeks in the 1897 war with Turkey. Armed groups entered Macedonia through Bulgaria, and Greek village leaders were murdered. The Macedonian struggle soon entered its second armed phase. 1903. In the spring, they carried out sabotage attacks in Thessaloniki and the countryside, and in August they declared an armed uprising. In retaliation, the Turkish army attacked everyone, punishing Greeks as well as Bulgarians. The flourishing communities of Krusovo, Nympheo and Klisora were burned down and hundreds of Greeks thrown into prison. Patriarch Joachim III dispatched brave clergymen to the Macedonian diocese, Chrysostomus to Drama, Germanos Karavangelis to Kastoria. Karavangelis wrote in his memoirs,
"When I reached Kastoria, I found the people in a terrible state, and the Turks, from hatred of Greece, were backing the claims of the Exarchate. The Bulgarians had set their sights as far as the river Aliakmon."
The Greek state, however, turned a deaf ear to his pleas for help, and so Karavangelis decided to act alone. It was on his encouragement that the first local armed bands took to the mountains. And the bishop himself, on foot or horseback, began his tours of the terrorised villages. He reopened the sealed churches, boosting the morale of the people. From the monastir consulate, Ion Dragoumis helped local leaders to set up secret committees for the defence of the cities and villages, pleading with Athens to do something before it was too late. In the Greek capital, leading private citizens had begun to mobilise. Stephanos Dragoumis, for example, warned,
"We must rush to help Macedonia. Our brothers are in danger. Tomorrow may be too late."
The Macedonian Committee was soon formed with Demetrius Kalopothakis, publisher of the newspaper Embros, as president. From Crete, the first Cretan volunteers set off to reinforce the local bands of Western Macedonia, Kaudis, Vranas, Dikonimos, Makris. Lambros Koromilas was appointed general consul in Thessaloniki, with wide responsibilities for the on-the-spot command of the struggle. He was assisted by young officers disguised as consul staff, as well as merchants, teachers, and even priests out in the countryside. The building of the Thessaloniki consulate, which today houses the Museum of the Macedonian Struggle, quickly became the command centre for the struggle in central Macedonia. August 1904. Overnight, 35 men passed over the borders into Macedonia. At their head was 2nd Lieutenant Pavlos Melas. His faithful companion was Lakis Pirazas, a foreigner. The conditions were difficult, and they moved at night, whilst the Turks kept guard and the Bulgarians lay in wait. Melas concentrated on psychology and organisation, talking to local notables and villagers to give them encouragement.
"My brothers, we have come here to help you. We have brought with us only love, patriotism and courage. With these and with the arms that we have brought you, we shall help you to stand up for yourselves."
Statista, the 13th of October, 1904. A Turkish detachment conducts a house-to-house search. Rifle fire breaks out. Darkness had fallen by the time Melas was hit. Wounded, he entered a stable, removed his cross, and handed it to Pirazas.
"Give this cross to my wife, and the rifle, as I told you, to my son Mickey. and tell them that I did my duty.
He was not the first to die in the struggle, nor was he to be the last. But his death shook Macedonia and stunned Athens. His song was on everybody's lips, and the Macedonia issue became a pan-Hellenic crusade overnight. The Macedonian countryside was organised systematically for the first time. Hideouts were built in the villages. The monasteries became supply centres. More and more new bands from free Greece and Crete were arriving, coming by land or by sea to fight side by side with the Macedonian rebels. In the common struggle, brave captains became the hope of the oppressed people. Captain Vardas, Captain Akritas, Captain Vuas, Captain Korakas, Captain Nikephoros, Captain Foufas, Captain Ruvas, and many, many more. Alongside them were the local chieftains, Captain Gonos, Captain Dalipis, Captain Mutrusis, and dozens more. Wellheads, streams, thick mud, strange sounds, mosquitoes, infectious diseases. The lake of Yanitsa was an extensive swamp formed by the waters of the river Loudias in Edessa and Nausa. The local chieftains, Captain Gonos from Yanitsa and Greco from Stromnitsa, transported the first Greek bands to enter the marsh. A silent but ruthless struggle had begun on land and water. From Athens came Lieutenant Domestikas, also known as Captain Nikephoros. In the summer of 1906, Second Lieutenant Telos Agapinos, Captain Agras, reached the marsh. In one clash, he was heavily wounded and taken to Nausa. Here he pondered,
"This struggle is not helping anyone. It must stop."
A sensitive ideologue, he could see that the slaughter among the Christians was of benefit only to the Turks. He requested a meeting with the Bulgarian leaders to put an end to the fratricidal warfare, but they had set a trap and captured him. They paraded him from village to village and finally hung him outside the village of Vladavo, which now bears his name. The Greeks, united like a fist, successfully faced off such deceptive slogans as "Independence for Macedonia" and "Macedonia for the Macedonians." They all knew that behind these slogans lurked the annexation of Macedonia by Bulgaria. But the Macedonian struggle was not an armed conflict for territorial gains. Its main focus was the sensibilities of the people, and this explains the mass mobilization. All leapt, a whole people united for the salvation of the homeland. Women's contribution was exceptional. School mistresses were in the front line, with a book in their hands and a pistol in their bags or beneath their pillows. This is why these women were the number one target for persecution by the Bulgarian committees. Women and girls also filled the ranks of the cultural and social associations. The struggle then moved to the cities. Second Lieutenant Souliotis Nikolaides, disguised as a merchant, organised the secret Thessaloniki organisation, a network for information, sabotage, assassinations, economic boycotts and mass mobilisation was thus formed. The aim was to expel the Bulgarians who, implementing a deliberate plan, had begun to settle there in recent years. Suddenly, in 1908, Turkish officers in the Macedonian Guard gave the signal for rebellion against the totalitarian regime of the Sultan. The young Turk constitution, declared equality before the law and the state for all ethnic groups. The armed bands came down to the towns and the people celebrated. Everybody was hoping for better days, but these hopes were soon betrayed. Many Macedonian fighters were killed when they returned to their villages, and the young Turks pursued a policy not of equality, but of narrow nationalist interests. In 1912, Greeks, Bulgarians, Serbs and Montenegrins formed a coalition to finally expel the Turks from Macedonia, Epirus and Thrace. During this war, the Macedonian penetrated deep into the Macedonian land, paving the way for the victorious Greek army. Macedonia was liberated with the Balkan Wars and its borders sanctioned by the Treaty of Bucharest in 1913. The northern provinces went to Serbia and Bulgaria, and the southern and central ones to Greece. Yet liberation would not have been possible without the 4-year-long Macedonian struggle. Much blood was spilt. With the passing of the years, however, these have faded. What remains are the legend and the knowledge of what is owed to those who struggled, both the famous and the anonymous.